Hey guys, welcome back to Steel City Sports. So we're only 8 days away from the start of the 2025 NFL season, so it's time to start putting out all my official predictions and rankings heading into the 2025 season. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at the teams that I have making the playoffs in the AFC. We're just going to go division by division and then give you my wild card teams. So starting off with the division my team plays in, which is the AFC North, I feel like this is one of the most no-brainers out there. It's the Baltimore Ravens, and I don't think anyone is surprised by this prediction. This team is head and shoulders above the AFC North right now. I think there's some other good teams in this division for sure, but when it comes to the Ravens, this team is stacked. I think you can legitimately make the argument that the Ravens on paper have the best roster in the National Football League. And you go back to really what their biggest problem was with the team last year. It was their pass defense. They were atrocious with their secondary last year. It struggled a lot, particularly in the playoffs. We saw the Bills being able to exploit them. And what did they do this offseason? It's kind of similar to what the Philadelphia Eagles did after the 2023 season. Because if you remember the Eagles in 2023, their pass defense completely imploded towards the end of the year. And what did they do in that offseason? They aggressively went out and addressed their secondary problems. They drafted two rookies in both the first and second round with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. And I believe they also brought back Gardner Johnson at safety. So they knew what their biggest problem was. They addressed their secondary, and because of that, they won the Super Bowl. And you just look at that Super Bowl game, one of those guys, those rookies they took, Cooper DeJean, had a pick six, directly led to them winning that Super Bowl. So the Baltimore Ravens kind of did a similar thing with that, where they looked at their team from this past year. What was our biggest problem? Our secondary. Our pass defense was atrocious last year. So what did they do to fix their secondary? They went out there and acquired Jaire Alexander on just a $4 million contract, which if Jaire Alexander is healthy, which I get is a big if, but if Jaire Alexander is healthy and plays majority of the games, we know when he's healthy, he's an all-pro level player. He's one of the best corners in the league. To get him on a $4 million deal, I could be wrong about this, but I don't even think he's 30 years old yet, so I still think there's plenty of gas left in the tank. And another thing is, even if Jaire Alexander misses time, I think that this secondary is now so loaded that he's kind of like a cherry on top. When it came to Green Bay, he was the playmaker in the secondary. They were relying on him game after game to be the playmaker, the difference maker in the secondary. That's not really going to be the case with Baltimore because he's surrounded by so much talent that if he misses time, it's not the biggest deal in the world. If he needs to take off a game here and there, it's not drastic for this team because they have so much depth in their secondary now. And on top of adding Jaire Alexander, they got Malachi Starks in the draft. They didn't have to move up to get him. He fell to them all the way down. I think it picked 28, somewhere around there where Baltimore was picking. And if you listen to my takes before the draft, I was saying Malachi Starks is one of the 10 best players in this draft. It's just in today's NFL, safety seems to be one of the most least valued positions. But just in terms of raw talent, I feel like Malachi Starks is a top 10 prospect from this draft. So to get him, it's kind of similar to what exactly happened to them with Kyle Hamilton, where Kyle Hamilton was touted as he could be a top 5 pick, and he fell to the Ravens, I believe, at 14. So now I think on paper, this is, you can argue, the best secondary in football. Because with corners, you got Jaire Alexander and Marlon Humphrey, and at safety, you got Malachi Starks and Kyle Hampton. That is a completely loaded unit, and I just give them so much props for aggressively addressing their big weakness from last year. So we're how many minutes in, and I haven't even talked about the offense. I mean, I don't really need to sell you guys on the Baltimore Ravens offense. We know that in the regular season, this is one of the greatest, most prolific quarterbacks we've ever seen in Lamar Jackson. I don't need to sell you guys on Lamar in the regular season. You guys know what he is. He's a two-time MVP, could very well win another MVP this year. Derrick Henry, just like I predicted. I mean, I don't think it's much of a hot take last year, but I told you guys Lamar and Derrick Henry had the chance to be the greatest quarterback-running back duo ever, and they were pretty fucking close to that last year just in terms of their stats. So that pairing's a match made in heaven. The O-line's still good. You still got capable weapons around Lamar Jackson. My only real big flaw for the Baltimore Ravens has to do with coaching. I do think that John Harbaugh is a total fraud. I think his game management and his schematics, particularly around Todd Monken. I think that Harbaugh and Monken, they have single-handedly, them two, led to the Ravens blowing playoff games in big spots. We've seen it happen time after time. The biggest example of that, the 2023 playoffs, where they hosted the AFC title game in Baltimore against the Chiefs, and the Kansas City Chiefs had the best run defense in the National Football League that year. And what did Harbaugh and Monken draw up for their game plan in that game? Hey, we have the reigning league MVP at quarterback. What should we do to attack the number one run defense in the NFL? Let's run the ball right at them. And this was pre-Derrick Henry. So that turned out to be a fucking genius idea, and they lost that game. And in a game they were favored in, by the way. So that, to me, is the biggest fatal flaw of the Ravens, and why I don't view them as a team that's going to go to the Super Bowl, is because of Harbaugh and Monken, I think, are fatally flawed. But that doesn't really play as much into the regular season. I think you can simply out-talent teams in the regular season, whereas playoffs is more so about coaching and schematics. But like I said, from a roster standpoint, this team is so loaded, they're going to win the North. And I wouldn't be surprised if they won 15, maybe even 16 games this year. That's how good and dominant they are as a regular season team. Now let's move on to the AFC East. Speaking of another dominant team, the Buffalo Bills. There's no other team in this division that you can even kind of talk yourself into winning this division. I like the Patriots. I think they're going to have a fun year this year. They're getting on track. They're heading in the right direction. However, they're nowhere near the Buffalo Bills. And I have my issues with the Bills. I do kind of blame the organization for not really embracing Josh Allen like some of these other teams. This is a take I've had. I don't think Josh Allen is going to win a Super Bowl with the Buffalo Bills, simply because of how the organization has built this team year in and year out. You look at, the other quarterbacks in this era that have won the Super Bowl. It's Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Matthew Stafford the last couple of years are the quarterbacks that won the Super Bowl. And they were given three key things, and that is good O-line play, good weapons, and good defense. Whereas you look at the Buffalo Bills, last year, I know they brought in Amari Cooper. He didn't really do anything. And I think going into this year, I think you can make a legit argument that the Bills have the worst receiver core in the National Football League right now. So he doesn't have high-end weapons. His O-line has been mediocre his whole time there. Nothing special on the O-line. And the defense now, I think, is kind of an area of concern. I know it got better towards the stretch of last year, but you look at what Jalen Hurts has had, what he had last year with that Eagles defense, or you look at what Patrick Mahomes has had in these last two Super Bowls that they've won, the defenses have been dominant. Whereas Josh Allen just hasn't gotten the support from his organization, even Stafford, as well. And two out of those three guys have had elite offensive head coaches. I know Nick Sirianni is a bit of an outlier with Jalen Hurts, but you look at Mahomes and Stafford, they both had Andy Reid and Sean McVay, whereas Josh Allen has had a defensive-minded Sean McDermott that I think is honestly outstayed his welcome with the Bills. For me, McDermott would have been gone probably 2 years ago. The fact that he's still there, I don't understand. He deserves credit for building the organization up, but I've made this comparison in the past. To me, Sean McDermott is similar to the Mark Jackson situation with the Warriors. When Stephen Clay and Draymond were young and developing, Mark Jackson did an incredible job of building the team up and establishing the culture. But when it was time for them to start winning championships, they got rid of Mark Jackson and brought in Steve Kerr. And that's what I kind of think the Bills should have done, is got rid of McDermott and find their offensive guy who can work perfectly with Josh Allen, because the offense is still very much, hey, Josh, throw on your Superman cape and just win us the game. Now, I give them credit for James Cook. They extended him. James Cook is a very much needed asset in this offense, so you don't need Allen running around as much. He still does, but not quite as much now. But all that said, I just brought up a lot of problems I have with the Bills. The other teams in this division are just a joke outside of New England. The Dolphins, I think, are going to be a fucking dumpster fire this year. I think the Miami Dolphins have a very good chance of just self-imploding this year. I think they're going to be horrible. Their defense is awful. All the vibes are terrible. I think there's a good chance that Tyreek Hill is not a Dolphin after this year and that Mike McDaniel could potentially be fired. So I think the Dolphins are going to be a train wreck this year. And the New York Jets, we know how I feel about the Jets. They have their laundry list of issues. I talked about them all last year. The same things apply to them that I criticized them for last year. It's just now they have a more inaccurate quarterback and a rookie head coach who's on the wrong side of the ball. So the Patriots, I think, will be a good team. I could easily see the Patriots winning 9 games, maybe 10 if everything goes their way. But no one can clearly threaten the Bills in this division. They have such a stranglehold because of Josh Allen. It really comes down to that because the rest of the roster is actually pretty mediocre. But when you have someone like a Josh Allen who's an all-time generational building block foundation piece, you can kind of overcome some of that stuff. But like I said, I don't think Allen's going to win a Super Bowl with the Bills because of that. But at least for the regular season, there's really no surprise why they've won this division. What has it been now, 5-6 years straight? And I think that's going to continue. I see no team that can realistically threaten the Bills in this division. Moving on now to the AFC West. Similar to what I just said about the Bills, it's the Chiefs. And I think it's really cute and funny that there's people out there that are realistically taking other teams in this division. I think Colin Cowherd actually predicted on his show that the Broncos were going to win this division. I've heard some other people say the Chargers could win this division. I think it's a fucking joke. Until we see the Chiefs dethroned in this division, you have to be a fucking moron to not pick the Chiefs to win this division. You just look at last year where they didn't even really have that good of an offense statistically, but they were just so buttoned up on defense and special teams and all that they won 15 games. And what a lot of people, myself included, kind of viewed them as like a down year. In a down year for the Chiefs, they won 15 fucking games and went to the goddamn Super Bowl. Like, I know that they've had, an up and down offseason. They've made some moves. They got rid of Tooney, I believe. He went to the Bears. And there's been all the Rashee Rice stuff. It actually just came out today that he is getting a 6-week suspension. I don't think is really going to hurt them that much because, he missed basically all of last year and they won 15 games. And he's just going to be an added cherry on top. So I think it's just downright foolish and idiotic to doubt Mahomes and Andy Reid with the dominance that they've had. Like, I don't know how a sane person with a functioning brain could pick against this team winning this division. I get it. It's better. The teams have gotten better. The coaches in this division have gotten a lot better. But this is the fucking Kansas City Chiefs in a dynasty. You don't pick against a team like that until we see it happen. And until that moment, I'm going to always pick the Chiefs to win this division. It's totally idiotic to not take them. Moving on. The AFC South, I feel like this is the one division in the AFC where you could really make the case for different teams. I even flirted with taking the Titans as a playoff team last year, not to win the division, but as a wild card. And I said, they put a lot of stuff around Will Levis. If it fails, it's really on Will Levis. And it turns out Will Levis was the worst player in the NFL last year, not even really that close. Had a cinder block where his brain should have been. So the Titans were a joke. Jacksonville's a really interesting team in this division as well with the new head coach Liam Cohen to go with. We've seen flashes here and there for Trevor Lawrence. If he can finally put it together, they've got him a stud receiver in BTJ. Travis Hunter, we have to see. He could be really special. The Jags are really intriguing. The Colts, I think the Colts are going to be really bad with Daniel Jones at the helm, and that's another video for another day. So I think this just kind of leaves this division wide open to the Texans yet again. Even though I have a massive fatal flaw with the Houston Texans, that is their offensive line is atrocious. Like, by far and away, the biggest problem with the Houston Texans last year was their O-line. And what did they do this offseason to address fixing their O-line? They traded away their best O-lineman, really their only good O-lineman, Laramie Tunsil, for a 4th or 5th round pick. Totally idiotic to me. Like last year, when you had Tunsil, CJ was still running around for his life. Now you get rid of that guy. Like, I think that is such a horrible decision. It's just everything outside of O-line I really like about this team. I think CJ Stroud is going to have a bounce-back year with the new offensive coordinator. Nico Collins is back fully healthy. You got some receiver depth. They brought in Christian Kirk. They drafted a couple guys in the draft, particularly Jaden Higgins, who I like a lot. And then this defense, I think, has a realistic shot to be the best defense in the National Football League. All of this captained by DeMeco Ryans I think you can argue is, a top 3 defensive head coach right now in football. The guy's an absolute stud. So, yeah, they have a big problem right now with offensive line, and their running back depth is also kind of worrisome with Joe Mixon being injured going into the year. But it's the fact that I view every other team in this division as much more of a question mark, that it just kind of leaves open this gap for the Texans to get in. Like, the Texans could win 9 games realistically and still win this division because it's just so wide open. I think the Colts are going to suck. The Titans, even though I like their pieces, they are not proven at all. They just picked number 1 overall. The Colts are starting Daniel fucking Jones at quarterback. So I just feel like the division should be a cakewalk for Houston, even though I don't think it's going to be too pretty with that O-line. So now we can move on to my wild card teams. So starting off with the first wild card team, you guys are going to call me biased. I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers are going to be a playoff team yet again. It just really kind of depends on which wild card slot you put them in at, whether they win, 9, 10, 11 games this year. I think they're going to be just a pretty good football team. They're going to be a solid operation this year. I've talked ad nauseum about the Steelers, so I won't try to go too long in this one, but I just like the team. I like that they've tried to, kind of revamp this team. They brought in new faces. They're actually making some big changes. Minkah Fitzpatrick was in the midst of a heavy decline, and as someone who's a Steelers fan, people out there who don't watch the Steelers like every snap like I do, they see that trade and they're like, why would they do that? Well, if you're a Steelers fan, you watch the games, Minkah's been sliding. Minkah really hasn't been a productive player in about 2 seasons now. He's been on a steady decline. I know Jalen Ramsey's not really considered to be in his prime anymore, but I just think he's a better NFL player at this point in time, and he's at a more important position. Corner is much more valuable than safety. He's a more versatile player than Minkah Fitzpatrick, and that trade also brought in Jonnu Smith, who I think is a very underrated piece. He's going to be a massive part of this offense. And let's talk about the offense with Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers, it's no secret that I've been heavily critical of Aaron Rodgers on this channel. When he was a New York Jet, I was bashing on Aaron Rodgers nonstop. And that's not going to go away. I'm not just going to stop criticizing Aaron because he's on my team now. I'm still going to be critical of Aaron. However, I still view him as an upgrade over the 2 guys we had last year. The 2 guys we had last year, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, were so supremely inconsistent. Fields, I don't think is like an actual NFL quarterback as much as I like him. His inaccuracy is so bad. He's one of the most inaccurate players I've ever seen. And, obviously I wasn't watching the fucking Bears every game, so it's different whenever you watch Fields and his highlights and you catch a Bears game here and there, and then it's different whenever you watch him play every snap for your team. And I was like, wow, I see now why Fields, why he isn't able to put it together as a star in this league. Is his inaccuracy is absolutely atrocious. And yeah, he can run the ball. He's a great athlete. We know that. That's why he still has a starting job in the NFL. But I just think as a long-term starter, he couldn't complete little layup throws. And I love Justin Fields, the guy, but as a player, that's so fatally flawed. You need to be able to make the little passes, and he just couldn't do that. He's so inaccurate, shamefully inaccurate as a passer. And then you go to Russell Wilson, just super inconsistent, really fell apart towards the end of the year, which I don't think is, 100% on Russ. And I wouldn't have been too mad with them bringing Russ back because when the offense was fully healthy, Russ actually looked pretty good with the Steelers. It's just down the stretch. George Pickens got hurt. He just did not finish off the season very good, especially in that Ravens game in the playoffs where we just got totally shelled. But I do think Aaron's an upgrade over both those guys for really one reason, his arm. He's a much better, much more consistent and accurate, thrower of the football. And I get it, he's not in his prime anymore. His athleticism is basically shot. He has basically the mobility of you and me, but the arm, this is arguably the most accurate quarterback in the history of the NFL. And I do think this offensive line is going to be better. And I'm willing to admit it. If we get through the season, we get to, week 5, the O-line sucks, I'll admit it. But I am banking on some improvement. We've dumped a ton of assets into this offensive line. We have 3 first-round draft picks on this offensive line. We also have Zach Frazier, stud center, one of the steals of last year's draft. And everyone forgets about Troy Fautanu, who's going to be back fully healthy on this line, who could really be a difference maker. So I think this O-line this year for the Steelers will be better than what he had with the Jets last year, so he'll have more time. I love DK Metcalf. He's a better version of George Pickens. Like I said, Jonnu Smith is going to be a big part of this offense. Caleb Johnson, I'm expecting a monster rookie year. I think he's going to be incredible in the NFL. So it's not like I think this is going to be some Super Bowl caliber team. I do think they're going to get shelled in the first week of the playoffs, but it's not a particularly tough schedule. I think they've upgraded at multiple positions. The defense looks really, really good on paper. You got all kinds of great players on the defense now with, Jalen Ramsey, you brought in Darius Slay, you got TJ Watt, who I still consider to be the best defensive player in football, not even really that close. Cam Hayward, I don't know what the hell was going on with his contract bullshit, but you got him. He's still really good. You just drafted that D lineman from Oregon, Derek Harmon. You have Patrick Queen. I think Joey Porter Jr. could really thrive now that he's not being asked to be the number one shutdown corner on this team. I think he's in a role that really more so suits him now that we have more cornerback depth. So I think this is a good football team all and around. It's just, I get it. It's popular to go out there and bash them because Aaron Rodgers. Like, everyone in the league hates Aaron Rodgers. I hated Aaron Rodgers when he was, with the Jets. I thought he was toast. So I guess you could say I have some bias there. I'm kind of overlooking some of that now that he's on my team. But I really do believe in this for everything I just talked about. I think it's on paper a good roster. Mike Tomlin, say what you will about him. And I have my problems with Tomlin for sure that I've talked about on here, but he provides that stability, and there was absolutely zero stability within the New York Jets franchise. Absolutely zero. They fired their head coach after 5 games. They had an interim Olbrich in there who didn't know what the fuck he was doing. The general manager was probably on fucking cocaine with some of the decisions he was making. Worst owner in the league with Woody Johnson. Like, that is a fucking circus. How can you expect the team to be good whenever your off-the-field operation is a fucking circus? Like, it's a scrambled mess in the front office and the ownership suite. So, no wonder the on-the-field operation didn't really translate. Whereas Aaron now, he doesn't have to worry about any of that. He doesn't have to worry about the stability of the franchise. This is arguably the most stable franchise in football. So, I think it's going to be good. I think they're going to be a solid team this year. Like I said, not expecting a Super Bowl run or anything, but I think they're going to be a good team, a good 10-11 win team. Like I said, go look at their schedule. It's not a very tough schedule. Moving on now to my second wildcard team I have is the Los Angeles Chargers. I do believe in this team, and it really stems from Harbaugh. Everywhere Harbaugh has gone, he's automatically impacted winning football. He's established and built out his culture. We're going into year 2 now. We now have 2 drafts with the Chargers under Harbaugh. I think they had yet another really good draft. I think Omarion Hampton is going to be a sensational player with the Chargers, because if you're familiar at all with Harbaugh, with Jim Harbaugh, his philosophy as a head coach is pound the fucking rock, run the football. And Omarion Hampton in that role with the Chargers, I think is legitimately going to be a monster. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he's the best rookie running back, even better than Ashton Jeanty this year, just for the setup that they have. The Rashawn Slater injury definitely hurts, but go look at this guy Hampton. I think he's an absolute freak. To put him alongside Justin Herbert, who I believe he only threw like 3 or 4 picks in last year's regular season and definitely melted down in that playoff game. We kind of touched on that when it happened. Yeah, you had to give Herbert blame, but I also blamed how the Chargers built their team with the lack of, really just kind of ignoring the skill position players. But going into this year, I think this is definitely a better receiver room. I think the return of Keenan Allen is not talked about enough. Keenan Allen in his last year with the Chargers in 2023 was still an elite level player. The only reason they wanted to get rid of him is because of Harbaugh's football philosophy, which, like I said, I've criticized Harbaugh for that. I think that's a legit thing to say. Like, in today's NFL, you kind of need special playmakers, and Harbaugh just doesn't really value that. But Keenan Allen, I still view as a high-end guy. I could very, very easily see Keenan Allen going over 1,000 yards this year back with the Chargers, because him and Herbert have that immediate chemistry. They were incredible together when they played together. You have Ladd McConkey coming off an incredible rookie year. I really like the rookie Trey Harris, I believe, from Ole Miss. Go look at Trey Harris's his college game log from this past year. Like, it's insane how good he was when he was healthy. And then, like we said, Marion Hampton, I'm very high on. Like, I just really like the setup. The defense we know is always going to be really good under Harbaugh. And, like, they're just going to be better than they were last year because it's a younger team. You're going to have Harbaugh establishing the culture further. I believe in the Chargers. I think they're going to be really good. And this brings us to my final wild card team. So, who do you guys think it is? You think it's the Pats? You think it's the Broncos? You think it's the Jags? It's none of those teams. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. And for a lot of this offseason, I was saying to myself, I don't view them as a playoff team until I looked at their schedule. That is the single reason, really, that made me pick the Bengals over the Broncos, is the schedule. Go look at the Bengals' schedule. I mean, it is a absolute fucking joke. I mean, it might be one of the easiest schedules. As a matter of fact, I have the schedule right here. We can go through it real quick. They have the Browns. That should be a win. They have Jacksonville, very winnable game. Then they got a little bit of a rough stretch with the Vikings. They could definitely win that against a rookie, J.J. McCarthy, technically a rookie. They got the Broncos. That might be a loss. They got Detroit. That might be a loss. But then they have the Packers. They could definitely beat the Packers. They have my Steelers. They could beat us. They have the Jets. That's an easy win. The Bears. They should be able to beat the Bears. My Steelers again, the Patriots, the Ravens and Bills, and Ravens is a very tough stretch. But then after that, the final 3 games of the year where the Bengals typically play their best football is Dolphins, Cardinals, Browns is how they finish off the year. So I really realistically see this being a 10-win team. Just go down through the schedule. They have a rough stretch at the beginning and then one towards the end. But outside of those 6 games, they're all very winnable games. And I think the Bengals, for that matter, the fact their offense is going to be so good. We know what the defense is. We know the defense is a disaster. At least they actually finally brought Trey Hendrickson back, although he's going to get off to a really slow start because he's missed basically the entire offseason. But it comes down to Joe Burrow is a superstar quarterback with all those offensive weapons around him. I think the O-line could definitely be better because they've dumped a lot of assets into their offensive line. And this is a very winnable schedule. And also on top of that, you look back like the past couple of years in the Joe Burrow era, they've always gotten off to really slow starts. They've really struggled to, win games early in the year. And I think that they've actually tried to address that going into this season is because this year you actually had Joe Burrow play in a ton of preseason games. Like he actually played a lot throughout the preseason, which is something previously he didn't do. So you had all the starters play with Burrow in the preseason. It's just a little thing, but it could be a sign to show you that they're actually taking it serious. They're taking the start of the season serious now. And I do think that the Bengals, it's just a winnable schedule. They've got such good high-end players. They can win any football game they're in because they have Joe Burrow. So that is my official AFC predictions. Definitely let me know down in the comments the teams you have making it. I'm sure I'm going to piss some people off with not having the Broncos in. But yeah, so a couple days here we'll be putting out my NFC playoff team predictions, and then I'll be doing all my rankings. And before you know it, we'll be Thursday Night Football next week. Cowboys, Eagles. Can't wait. So if you made it this far in the video, thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe.